Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. And this is my reading wrap up for July of 2025. I had a good reading month in the sense of how many books I read, but not necessarily as good in the ratings and the way I felt about them. So and that was kind of a surprise. I've had a pretty good run, and this time, and maybe it's just me, sometimes it's just your mood. And I did have, I wasn't moody this month so much, but I was picky. Let's just say that. And there were some books that I really was struggling with a little bit, but I finished all of them. I do have an arc review to put up, but I'm going to share with you what I felt about that arc today. Yeah, let's just get started. So I'm going to give you the stats for this month. I've written them all down in my new book journal, which I'm so excited about. I don't know if I showed you this, but my BookTube notebook is different than I've had in the past. And I love sloths, but I love all these animals really. So maybe not the snake, but they got to live a life. So I read 7 books this month of July, and that was 2,018 pages, and my average reading was 22 days. Now you might think, how in the world is that possible? Here's why. I had gotten Wild Dark Shore on Book of the Month as an audio earlier this year, and I had not gotten back to it. I was not enjoying it. And so the other day I thought I need to tie up this loose end because it keeps showing up in my in my space on Book of the Month. And so I decided it was time to finish, and I did finish it. But because it took me so long to finish it, that average was skewed by that, but that's okay. My top moods were emotional, mysterious, and dark, followed by hopeful, lighthearted, and funny. Then I had some tense, yet informative, reflective, and sad moods at the kind of smaller chunk of the pie. It was an interesting group of books that I read this month, that's for sure. They were medium paced 71% of the time for me and fast paced 29% of the time. And that's actually also true for the page makeup. I read 71% of the books at 300 to 499 pages, and for 300 or less pages, there were 29% read. Fiction was 86%, nonfiction 14%. So not unusual for me, but a little bit more nonfiction is popping in there. They were mostly contemporary, short stories, and romance, followed by true crime, thriller, mystery, and literary fiction. 57% of the books I read this month were in print form and 43% were digital. So that was almost even. It was really kind of amazing. My average rating was 3.63 stars. And so you might be surprised with which one of these books ended up being a 4-star read for me and which ones did not. I don't have many physically, but because a couple of them I ended up with a library copy. So the first one I read was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I had recently read just for the summer. Was it recent? I don't know. My life is just like, oh, it just seems like it's flowing in ways that I can't be keeping so much track of what I do when. But I enjoyed that one a lot. So I went on and decided to go ahead and get this first one read, which it isn't in a series, but it's sort of they have different characters that show up in different books, I'm told. So I just went ahead and got this one because I think it was written longer ago than the others that I have. So I enjoyed this one. This was a 3.5-star read for me. It didn't quite make me as happy and engaged as Just for the Summer did, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed these characters, Alexis and Daniel. And what happens really in this is that Alexis is a doctor. She has a lot of money. Her family is well heeled as well and has been for a long, long time. And she ends up going on a trip with her friends to an Airbnb in a different community, and she meets Daniel. And she's recently broken up with her boyfriend, but they were, I think, supposed to get married, but they are living in the same house in this other place where she practices medicine. And I think she's an ER doctor. And then Daniel lives in more of the country, small town. He's the mayor of the town. He owns the Airbnb. He owns everything. No, not really, but very different lifestyles, very different ages. But it was exciting to kind of get to know them, to see what was happening. There were some like moments where you were really like, oh, what's going to happen? So I really did enjoy it, but it was a solid 3.5 for me. I can't say that I liked this one as much as the other one, but I can't wait to get to yours truly because I understand that yours truly, I think, picks up with or is about a character that was in this book. And I'd like to kind of expand my understanding of that character and what makes her the way that she is. And so I think that'll be fun. I'll probably get to that fairly soon. We shall see. I also did a buddy read this month with my friend Jamie, and she and I read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. I talked about this in my TBR, I think. And I will say that this was really dark. I'm pretty tolerant of violence, and I don't typically get really kind of impacted by books that are gory and detailed and those kinds of things about serial killers and murders and stuff. I don't know if it's because it's a true story or if it's because I'm in a different season of my life, but I didn't not pick it up for that reason, but I did discover and notice that I was really impacted a little bit more than I normally would be. It is very, I will tell you, very, very difficult material, very descriptive, and very challenging to discover how long this serial killer, the Garden State Killer, got away with all of this. I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. I enjoyed it very, very much. I think it was well done. I had a little bit of a problem with a couple of things. One, the gore, but that wouldn't necessarily affect my rating. Really, what I had a little bit of issue with was the way that it was written, and it had sort of I don't know what it was about the pacing of it. It just wasn't necessarily fast paced for me, particularly, but also and there's no fault of this author, because she passed away while she was writing the book. Other people had to come in and write parts of the book after she died. And so I think that that was obvious to me at times, and it was different, and you had to kind of get in the groove of it. But also there was narrative, and then at one point there was a dialogue that happened, and I was confused about why we went from narrative to dialogue, which was pretty lengthy. And while it helped obviously to advance the story, it was quite unexpected for me, I guess. It popped around a lot, let's just say that. So I had a little bit of trouble. I'm glad I had the physical copy because I tried listening to it and it just wasn't working for me because I couldn't stay on track with where we were and who we were with and who was writing at that time. And so I do recommend it though, if you have the stomach for it. It's a really interesting read and one that I think we should, consider and honor her work on this because she did do a lot of research. It's just sometimes it's a little slow because of that. And then I read The Beach Trap by Ali Brady, which I have on digital, and I read a combination of both digital and hardback, not hardback, paperback, which I got from my library. This was a buddy read or a group read for the Booklist Thursday book club with Lindsay and Sarah. I've talked about this one a lot, so I'm only going to say that I gave The Beach Trap 3.5 stars. This one also I had a little bit of difficulty with because I did not love one of the characters. Her name is Kat, which is, I was thinking about that the other day because one of my best friends here on BookTube and in real life really is Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures. And she loved this book. And I was like, not really loving it like you are. But it was interesting. It was entertaining. It was exactly what I expected, which is good. It was probably a little bit like it had some depth and then it had some frivolity that I just wasn't quite enjoying. For example, there's one male character who it's cute because he calls this dog all kinds of weird names and it's cute, but I was sitting there thinking, would a grown man who's never met this woman behave this way and talk like that? And so there were just some impractical things that happen, I guess, in these relationships because it is both a love story, but also a story about friends and family and grief and those kinds of things. But I did tell you the synopsis of this, so I'm not going to go back through that. But I will say it had some short pages. It was easy to follow. You went back and forth from these very well developed women characters, so you were certain when you were reading about Kat and when you were reading about Blake. I loved Blake. I loved Blake a lot, and I did enjoy the male characters more than I enjoyed Kat for sure. Kat did have some moments where she was a good human on the earth, but really it was tricky. And I guess maybe because of her, and I'm not going to go into what it is, but because of her lifestyle and what she does for a living versus Blake, who's a little bit more down to earth, obviously doesn't have the money that that Kat has. So they were very, very different, which I think is good for the plot. And I enjoyed it. 3.5 is no slouch of a rating. So, would I read another book by Allie Brady? I think so. I've heard that Battle of the Bookstores is really good. My library doesn't have it, and it is the 1st of August as I am filming this, so I can no longer buy a book, but I'll get to it at some point. Battle of the Bookstores, though, I heard from Sarah and a couple other people is really good. So I would probably try that one. Beyond that, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. All right, then I read a short story by Abraham Verghese, which is called Abscond. And I read The Covenant of Water by this author last year, I think, and I loved it way more than I thought that I would. And so when I saw that this was a short story and it was free, I think, for me to get, or I had a limited time maybe to read it, I decided to give it a try. I like short stories. They're nice to put in between heavy reads, and these were some heavy reads at times. So that was just exactly the right thing. It's kind of like the dessert after you have a big meal. And so the short stories really work for me. Abscond got the highest rating of all of the books I read in the month of July. This one got 4 stars. And this one isn't easy as well. This is about a young boy who lives with his parents, and I think he's an older teenager, as I remember. His name is Ramanathan, and he is a great tennis player, and his father's really encouraging of his love of tennis, and his mother is certain that he should become a doctor like his father, and she's not really supportive of this at all. So the book sets up that there's going to be this tension, and I have talked about it as the plot of this before too, so I won't go into that as much as I will say that this was beautifully written. Even though it was a short story, these characters were very well and quickly developed, which of course only a masterful author can really do and do well, because short stories are challenging. You usually find them to not have a lot of depth, and which is not a bad thing. They're short stories, and so they're again kind of like the little snack or the dessert that we want rather than, a course of the meal. But I think the character development was just right, and he spent a bit of time developing those characters in the beginning of the book, but then the plot carries on as well. So it's a good mix of both plot and character development. You felt like you understood these people, you felt their sorrow, you felt their joy, you felt their family dynamics. I think I've got to read Cutting for Stone. I've got to read more by this author because I really enjoy him. So that was my best read of the month. This was a disappointment, I have to say. The Unraveling of Julia was an arc that I was given by NetGalley by Lisa Scottolini or Scottolini, depending on how you pronounce her name. And I was certain that I would love The Unraveling of Julia because I had recently read What Happened to was it the Bennets or the Devlins? I have both books, and now I can't remember which one I read. I read one of those. It's in the other room, so I don't want to get up and go look. But I was certain I was going to love this book. I was absolutely certain. And it was set in Italy. And so I thought, oh, what a great place to go and to, be in this book. It was a Tuscan estate that she discovered that she inherited from what she thinks maybe was her real parent, and she was surprised by this. She's been adopted. She never knew anything about her real family, and so she goes there to discover whether or not she can find out if these people were her family or not, because she's not sure at all why this home was deeded to her. I really struggled to finish this one. I, in fact, started skimming it at the end because it was just so slow and so this one was really, really hard. I'm not even sure I rated this one, to be honest. Oh, I did. I gave it 3 stars, which probably on Goodreads, which probably was really more like a 2.5. I'm not kidding. I was really shocked by this. And then I read some of the Goodreads reviews, and I'm not the only person that was struggling with this particular book as well. It seemed like it was totally out of her other writing. It was slow. It didn't move for the longest time. There were characters that seemed you couldn't really tell what she was going toward, which was indeed part of the problem. For the longest time, there wasn't even really a plot that was unfolding. It was just, and today she did this, and today they did this, and today she saw this, and it just wasn't what I was expecting. I don't really even remember much about this book except that it was set in in a Tuscan village, and she had all these questions about her real family that she wanted to get answers to. So I wish I could say I really enjoyed it. I did not. And so I need to rate it on, I think I've been putting it off because I don't I don't want to say, but I just didn't love it. All right, then I read another short story, The Answer is No by Frederick Bachman. It was a palate cleanser from another book that was a little heavier, and I think it was Julia. But this one did not work well for me either. I have to say, I may be in the minority on this one because it does have higher ratings. A lot of my friends, including Lindsay, gave it 4 or 5 stars. It just didn't work for me. I love Frederick Bachman. I plan to read much more of Frederick Bachman in my life and happily to do. But I could not get past it. Again, it was a short story. You had a period of time to develop some characters as deeply as you can and a plot. The problem was neither of those things happened in my mind. It was just a redundant same situation that kept happening, and it didn't move enough, and it didn't develop enough, and so I just felt like I was reading the same chapter over and over again with the same people and the same problem and the same ridiculousness, and I just but if you're interested, and you might be, and again, you might be the person who gives it 5 stars. It's about a man who lives in an apartment. Some people from the HOA, which I call the HOA, but they probably don't call it there, come to his door, and they want him to take care of something that's happened in the apartment complex. And he refuses. And then they keep coming back, and he refuses, and they keep coming back. And I just could not. Yeah, it was all I could do to finish it. And it was not long. In fact, let me tell you how many pages it is. That's probably the worst part of this. It's 68 pages long, and I just didn't work for me. But again, it wasn't poor writing necessarily, it was poor plotting that gave it to the 3. And it probably was a 2.5, to be quite honest. All right, then I finished Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. This one had been on my Book of the Month Club list for a while. It was an audio. I've only ever bought one audio book from Book of the Month, and this was it. And I wanted to get back to it because I started it like 3 or 4 months ago and just wasn't quite getting there. So I said, oh, I'm going to tie this loose end up. I could probably finish this before the end of the month, and then I could get it off my TBR. And I did. It was long, long, long ago. This is a man named Dominic Salt who finds himself on an island in Antarctica with his children, and something has happened to his wife. So he's raising his children while living in the decline of this island, and really essentially the decline of the world. And so global warming has caught up with us, and it is destroying the territory where they are, but also in other places as well. And they're stranded essentially on this island. They have no way of getting out, and they don't have a lot of food or support in any other way. Either they're running out of supplies. A woman shows up on the shore and she's not in good health, and they have no idea where she came from or how she ended up washing up on the shore. And so they take her in and they try to nurse her back to health, discovering that her husband was someone I think that Dominic knew, who was trying to investigate the impacts of climate change and the impacts of global warming, and trying to figure out answers to certain questions that they have about how they can, recover this space, or can they even recover this space. The audiobook was wonderful. It had different characters reading, and so that was good. It wasn't hard to follow. It was longer chapters at first and then got to be super short chapters at the end, and so that was a little bit rushed. It felt like it rushed at the end, which I don't know if I'm just the only person that felt that way. I would say it's possible because this one got really great ratings. People love this book. I didn't dislike it completely, but I didn't love it. I like the way they developed the characters. It was just a little slow for me. It was just not quite moving out of and then this happened again, and it was a theme for me. It was just felt like I was reading the same things over and over again, and it was just kind of redundant. The same day, but just a different sort of point of view in that space. But I will say that that did make it good. So you got the point of view of Dominic, you got the point of view of Rowan, which is the woman that washed up on the shore, his children. Each of them kind of had some different skills. They had to grow up super fast. But really, they had no contact with anybody outside of this island, and they were trying to figure out how they were going to survive with the rations that they had, and was anybody ever going to come to try to support and rescue them? Because they had said, we're in big trouble here, when they still had a connection to be able to do that. So it was good. It was kind of the end of the world as we know it type book. Apocalyptic is a better way of saying it. But yeah, it just didn't work completely for me, but I'm glad that I finished it. I'm glad that I read it. And again, I know a lot of people who absolutely loved it. I think she's a great writer. I would read something else by this author. So thanks for watching today. Thanks for joining me on my channel. Let me know what you read this month and if you've read any of these too, and have no qualms about saying you loved any of these that I really didn't love. It could, again, just kind of be a July mood for me. I have no idea. But I'm hoping that August is a little bit lighter and better and more entertaining for me. And maybe I don't feel like DNFing as many books as I have. And it's actually beyond July. I felt this way a couple of months ago, too. I've just been in the space. I was talking to my friend Michelle at Michelle Lynn Reads the other day. We had a chat to catch up, and I said, I've just really been DNFing a lot of books, and that's not like me. But I think my taste maybe has changed, or maybe my patience has changed. I don't know. And there's some of these that maybe if I had finished them, I would have loved the ending of them. But I just don't know, because I said, no, that's not going to work for me. So we all have choice. So let me know if you finished and you loved them, if you didn't finish and you didn't love them, or if you would like to read them now, despite some of the things that I said about these books, because again, they might be just up your street and I'm living in a different neighborhood. So I appreciate you all so much. And as always, happy reading. Bye.